All right, everybody. It is episode 11 of the Fantasy Timeline. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm with my main man, Bill at Super Dupaflex. Bill, how you doing?
Good. Excited for the night. I don't have to talk as much.
So, if you are watching, you can obviously see who we have with us. If you're listening to us on the pod, however, we have one of the smartest and best looking men in the business, Dynasty Outhouse. Dynasties, say hello to everyone.
You got half that right. I mean, I don't know about smart, but I mean, I know I'm good looking. Can't help that.
Well, we're just trying to bring up the attractiveness of the podcast. So our first reach out was to Dynasty Outhouse. If you're listening to us, you probably know he is one half of the dream team over at Trade Addicts Podcast. They do it all. They focus on trades, but they're just both smart, good, and freaking entertaining, if I can say that, without having Bill do a bunch of editing later on.
Thank you.
So, Outhouse, there's a lot we're going to talk about today, but just a couple of questions for the audience out here. What do you love most about Twitter?
I don't randomness. I don't know, man. It is just it's entertaining. Things about food, things about dynasty trades, and then kittens, lots and lots of cat videos. It's just a lot of fun. But weirdly, like, I've met so many amazing people on the Twitters that it's just become an addiction. It's part of my life at this point. Like, one of those, would you give up Twitter for like a year for $10,000? And I'm like, pay off my mortgage and maybe we'll start talking.
Right. And I'm glad you're actually the first guest we've ever brought onto the timeline, because you're one of a small group of people that actually helped launch this podcast. I had an idea for a podcast. I kind of reached out to some people that I knew that were cool people and good people. And Outhouse gave me a ton of advice on how to get this thing started. So, we'll get all the mushy stuff out of the way. Outhouse, appreciate you. Because probably without you and your amazing heart hands, this pod wouldn't be going. So, appreciate it. Appreciate everything that you do for a lot of people out here in the community.
No, man, it was a great idea. Like, I remember, like, I was looking for, some ideas just because I was bored. I'm like, maybe I'll just do another podcast. And you DM me and you're like, look, I'm DMing you this because I like this idea and I kind of want it to be mine. And then you told it to me. I'm just like, you should go do that. I'm not going to take that from you. Yes, absolutely. How do I do that? Buy a microphone, talk into it.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, I don't even know where to start. What do I do? I thought it was going to be this big, complicated process.
Yep.
And Outhouse just goes, dude, literally, just plug in a mic, get StreamYard, and go. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really easy. Okay, I'm going to do that. So, yeah, I mean, again, appreciate it. But now that we've gotten all the sentimental stuff out of the way, we're going to go into the news. I, unfortunately, do not have Brian Harr's amazing voice, so I just say we're going into the news. So the Jacksonville Jaguars hired Jay Gruden of Washington Redskins fame, or maybe infamy, as their offensive coordinator. Does this tilt the needle for either one of you guys on any of their offensive players?
Yes. I mean, it can't get worse, right? I mean, Marone is still there, right?
Yes.
That was like back and forth for a while. Like, I feel like they said he was officially gone, and then the next day we're like, well, they decided not to let go of him. What? I think I already said it on my podcast. We can't take that back. But like, they're so vanilla. But Gruden, I mean, it's funny. You have these coaches that become head coaches after being very good offensive coordinators. We're going to talk about one right after this, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget by that time that they were very good at their job. But maybe they're not meant to be head coaches. Maybe they were just in a terrible situation, but they are still very good offensive minds. I think Jay Gruden will get back to that. And that could only mean good news for this offense, especially coming off of, I mean, last year was a step in the right direction from what it was before, but I think this is leaps and bounds better.
Yep, I agree. I don't think, there's so many guys, that's their job and that's what they're supposed to be. They get their shot to lead the whole team, and, sometimes it's better that they can just focus on one side of the ball and, do their job and not have to worry about something that they're not quite as good at. So I think he'll do a good job, and I think he'll, if regardless, whoever the quarterback is, I think that's a good thing. It might hurt. It may hurt Fournette a little bit, I think, just because, they like to use kind of a receiving back, for third down, something a little bit, more of a scat back type player. Mm-hmm. So, or at least, historically he has. So we'll see with that. But, Fournette has caught a lot of passes. So maybe he'll be more willing to use him for all three downs.
Yeah. Can I completely derail us already?
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Don't say no to me, Bill. I'm the guest. You can't do that. So do we think Fournette is in the plan for the Jaguars at this point? I know they kept their head coach, but they have a new offensive coordinator. He has no guarantee. The Tom Coughlin stripped his guaranteed money.
Yep.
They have nothing really beholden to him. Lots of good rookies coming in here. I figured they're at least bringing in a receiving back. If they're not just bringing in his replacement and letting him go, maybe not this year. Maybe they trade him. I don't know. I like the idea of Fournette in a good offense. I don't know if the Jaguars care enough about Fournette. Plus, they're going to have to pay him after this year.
I've been scared of Fournette since they stripped his money. I mean, they pretty much just set themselves up to get rid of him whenever they feel like it and really not incur that much, very little, if any, cap damage on it. So, it was one of the reasons why I didn't draft him last year. And don't get me wrong, he had a good season, but I didn't want to take the risk drafting him at the price I would have to get him, knowing that he could get, and let's remember, I mean, he played 16 games last year, but he was constantly dealing with injuries, suspensions. Playing 16 games was almost something unheard of for Leonard Fournette before last year. So, just because he did it once, I mean, if he gets into any kind of trouble, I could see the Jaguars parting ways and just letting that be someone else's problem. So, yeah, and this was a very interesting move by the Jags, in my opinion. They had DeFilippo in there last year, and I didn't think he did a bad job with what he had to work with. So I was a little shocked that they decided to let him go and then bring in Jay Gruden. But, I mean, I thought he was an excellent offensive coordinator when he was with the Bengals. Really kind of got that offense clicking with a lot of the same pieces that we see there now that have struggled since he's left. So that'll be an interesting move. And we go from one head coach turned offensive coordinator to another head coach turned offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett. Clap if you hear me. Clap if you hear me. He's gone from the deep south to the very frigid right now Northeast. I don't know. I honestly don't know what to make of this move. The personnel that they have in place right now isn't very similar to personnel that he's had in the past. So I don't know what to think. So I'll let you guys kind of maybe talk me into why it was a good move or a bad move.
You're going to have to talk first eventually, Bill.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of along the same lines, right? I mean, he was a really good coordinator. So, I mean, that's kind of it. I don't know a ton about him. I'm not super excited about it, but I mean, it can't be a bad hire. I don't think. Like scheme wise, I mean, typically he's always had like that X receiver, right? Like that. Do they really have that? So they might be that might be limiting his play calling, but like I don't really know. Like I'm not like super stoked about it, but he's got good pieces, and I'm sure he could have done worse than going to the Giants, I guess. And he's good with the quarterbacks, right? So I mean that's the biggest thing probably is for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember necessarily what his offense was, but I remember that he was going to be a head coach somewhere, and Jerry Jones paid that man more money than some head coaches just to stay as offensive coordinator. So they didn't lose him for like one more year so he could be head coach the next year. He used to be a thing before he became mediocre. So
yeah.
And again, I was about to say it's impossible to screw up so badly with the pieces he'll walk into, but I think we just saw that Pat Shurmur screwed up that badly with the pieces Garrett just is going to walk into. But yeah, like it's tough to believe he will screw this up, and he can't screw up, clock management like he did in Dallas all the time because it's not his job anymore.
Right.
So. Like, yeah, exactly like we said with Gruden. Like, we forget that he was once good at that job because he was so bad / mediocre at the head coaching position. It's got to be good news. It's again, it's next to impossible to screw this up because we've seen some person screw it up already.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, especially with all of the intel he has on the Dallas Cowboys. Those games should be interesting for the two games they play each other next year. But want to go on to one last thing, and it's not really fantasy related, but sometimes we do some non-fantasy related things here. The Pro Bowl is going to try out an alternative to the onside kick by giving the option to take the ball at the 25 and having to convert a 4th and 15. Sounds interesting. I hope that since this is pretty much a glorified exhibition game, we see this multiple times just to see what it would look like in an actual NFL game. If the NFL switched over to this rule, how do you think it would affect fantasy?
I mean, points, man. What was it? Offsides. Onside kicks were recovered by the kicking team. What was it, like 2%?
2%. Yep.
This year. So anything is better than nothing. We've seen teams convert 15-yard downs. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. And it's not. I mean, it's back to offense versus defense. It's not praying for luck. It's the talent can come into this. I think it's something that the teams will try a lot more than they will onside kicks, and I think it's something teams will convert a lot more than they did onside kicks, especially this year. And yeah, I think there's someone in someone's ear for this Pro Bowl be like, "Yo, just try this. Do it at least once or twice. Let people see it. Let them get excited because we're pushing this through anyway." But if you got to trip up if someone on the sideline has to trip a cornerback so the guy can actually catch the 15 yards to convert it, that's fine. We'll let it slide. But I think it's awesome. I think anything to make the game more fun and doesn't like they're talking about getting rid of the kickoff. That's weird. I don't know how they're going to do that. This is something that's not that nuts. This is something that people like fans could have thought of. Probably did think of. Like, you know that there's someone listening right now. You're like, I thought of that like 10 years ago. What are you talking about? Like, yeah, no, this is something you could easily think of. And I think it's something that everyone would like to see. It's like the shootout at the end of hockey. It's just, I mean, I'm a defenseman, so I'm not really a fan of that per se. But like, it's something where fans were like, ties are boring. Let's just, when
Yep.
we used to play in the streets, we would just have a one on, shootout, let it happen.
Yep.
And then it's just like, whoa. And I mean, it's been like 15 something years since they've been doing that, and it's still awesome.
Yeah. When I put that on the show sheet, I had read an article where back in the day before they changed the rules of the onside kick, it was like converted 20% of the time or something like that. And then this year, I guess they, at least in the article, it said it had been up to 10%. It was 10% of conversion, but maybe there's something else in there. I don't know. But there was 36 times this year where a team went for it on 4th and 15 or more, and they converted 24%. So, I mean, there's actually, so regardless, I mean, you're looking at a 15% potential, increase in conversions of that over the new ruled onside kick at a minimum. So I think that alone will make the games more exciting.
I mean, it still should be a metaphorical Hail Mary because it's not going to be the play a Hail Mary. But
Right.
I mean, it shouldn't be easy. And 4th and 15 isn't easy, but it's absolutely doable. I'm a fan of this idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I saw this on the show sheet, I was just thinking, does someone tell Andy Reid week 1 to just go for it every time and have the Chiefs score 80? Because, I mean, a 4th and 15 for that offense is like a 4th and 5 for most other offenses. So I can imagine, especially if someone talked trash during the week, I could see Andy Reid, we're going for it every time. We're going to score 80 this week. So, it's real interesting. I hope you're right, Outhouse, and I hope they, someone says, hey, we got to pull this off at least 3 or 4 times throughout the course of this game, show the fans how good this can look and go with it. But
I think as long as it's not awful, they'll do it in the preseason because that's usually where they do really test stuff out.
Exactly.
So I think it'll happen. I'm excited.
Exactly. So before we get into what we have seen on the timeline, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time of year where we're all trying to figure out if we want to enter more leagues. And let's face it, we all want to enter more leagues. If the answer is yes, we suggest at the timeline that you go to Safe Leagues. They have orphans at all price ranges, and you can see all the information about the team you want to buy before you make the decision. Go to safeleaguesfantasy.com/orphans and type timeline in the promo code line and, check it out. I was on there the other day and I had to kind of pull my hand away from the keyboard because I wanted to buy a whole bunch of teams. So if you're looking to enter 1, 2, or more leagues, again, go to safeleaguesfantasy.com/orphans and check it out. And if you like something you see, type in the promo code timeline. But now that we've done that, there was a trade that came in right before we came on. I didn't even get a chance to put it on the show sheet. This is strictly for you, Outhouse. In a startup, the 104 for the 307, 501, and a 2021 first.
No.
Okay, so I have another one that Bill and I disagreed on. DeAndre Hopkins for Cortland Sutton, Evan Ingram, and a 2021 first.
Wow. It's funny. Right before I jumped in here and we started talking, I retweeted a poll that was Nuke for Sutton and the 105.
Okay.
I voted for Nuke in that, and I'll vote for him again here. This is closer than Nuke in the 105, I think. I don't know, man. That's rough. It's next year's always, better. Next year's always greener. The 21 class is going to be awesome. I never play the guessing game because I've seen so many teams go from worst to first. But if you have a team that's absolute trash and it's there first, just think about what the picks for Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are going to be worth in a Superflex league, and it's literally making me drool thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been collecting 21 firsts for a little bit now, and that cat's out of the bag because I just said it out loud. But man, Hopkins, like, I was worried about his usage this year. His depth of target was like 4 yards. He wasn't getting the deep catches. He wasn't getting big touchdowns. It was a little worrisome, but he's still just destroyed. He's still awesome. That offense isn't going to get worse. Let's put it that way. Maybe they get, yes, safe leagues is the bee's knees. Things pop up there. They're hopefully will draft a lineman. They will hopefully get a third wide receiver that can stay healthy. Like, it's ridiculous that Stills, Fuller, and QT just not healthy anywhere. Nope. Hopefully they'll get a tight end that is good and can stay healthy. I mean, there's so much they can do with the free agency and the draft coming in. I'm not worried about Hopkins. I'm worried about Evan Ingram staying healthy. That I will absolutely put out there. And 21 first, it's too far out to value it in a trade involving someone as big and as now as DeAndre Hopkins.
So this was a tweet that both Bill and I saw on Twitter, and we were on opposite sides. I was on, as you said, Outhouse, the right side, the DeAndre Hopkins side. But the interesting thing is that the first trade I gave you is all of their current ADPs as of from Fantasy Pros. Now, 1 QB league, so I couldn't remember if the trade that we were talking about was 1 QB or Superflex. But if it's Superflex, those numbers go down even further. And I think sometimes we see an age. We see, someone said, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 29. First of all, I wish I could be 29 again. But, we have to watch what's going on in the field. Hopkins was dominant. I don't have an issue trading DeAndre Hopkins, but I think I need more certainty than Courtland Sutton, Evan Ingram, and next year's 2021 first. That's just my opinion. Bill, we chatted about it briefly, but I want to get your side of it too, because I want to kind of see things through your eyes. Why was the package appealing to you?
I love Nuke, but I mean, and just to even strengthen your side a little bit more, he's going to be 28 for the whole season next year. So he's a little younger than what you thought. But Sutton, I think, is just like he's on the verge of being, let's say, like a wide receiver 1. So, and he may have already been, I don't even know. So I feel really confident that he's on the upswing. Getting Ingram, he's still going to hold value. I mean, he's a guy that I would probably end up flipping once he was healthy and put up, 4-6 weeks of production. And then plus getting that first round pick. I just think that that's a lot of assets for one, especially when you saw Hopkins. Like, if you look at how he does with and without Fuller, that's a little bit of a concern of mine. Granted, Fuller isn't healthy all the time, but what if they get somebody else in there that, will play that role and be that effective? And then how much does that affect Hopkins? So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I mean, I'm debating on moving Hopkins in a league or two already, just because I like to move guys a little earlier, just rather than hold on. I mean, I'd like to start doing that because I don't do that, but I'd like to start moving guys a little bit earlier, like me moving David Johnson today. It's just one of those things that, like, he could be virtually worthless in a year. So Hopkins won't be that, but I just feel like after this 2020 season, he's gonna be in that 28-year-old range where wide receiver values are not going up anymore, and so you're gonna start losing value, entering 2021. So That's kind of my thought, and that's why I think I would take the Sutton side.
So
Okay, so I pulled it up. Well, I pulled up a Trade Addicts league just because that's what I do. Cortland Sutton was wide receiver 20.
No.
But I do agree. I am a huge Cortland Sutton fan. I think the dude is a beast. He will be a beast.
Can you sort by points per game and then just tell me like what the difference is between Hopkins and him?
Hopkins was wide receiver 5 in points per game with 18.
Mm-hmm.
Sutton was wide receiver 26 at 14.24.
Okay. So you're losing 3 points, but you potentially could be getting a tight end that will outscore like an. So, you know, you get a tight end
going down 18 to 14. You're losing
3 point. Something.
Oh, that's math. 3 and change. You're right. Never mind.
So
cool.
So
I'm smart, like you said.
You know, I don't get me wrong. Cortland Sutton is he's gonna be big. I mean, that's not the part I'm arguing. I was more arguing the 5 weeks you'll get of Evan Ingram, and then a random 2021 first. But I do have a question because we talk about new faces and new places all the time. Do you have any concerns about what Pat Shurmur might do to Sutton? I mean, we kind of saw an offense that could never really get on track in New York. And do you have any fear about what may happen in Denver?
No, because this is going back to the same thing. He was good at what he did for a little bit. I mean, there's a lot you need to do when you're the head coach. Mm-hmm. When you're the offensive coordinator, you're picking plays. That's what you're doing. I mean, that's all you got to do. I think the step back will be good for him. I mean, since we live in a retread league, he was a bad head coach when he was at the Browns, but he wasn't a very good head coach when he was a head coach back then.
Right.
But he was a good enough coordinator to get that job again.
Yeah.
So I am not worried at all. Plus, I believe in the player. He doesn't even need that great of a quarterback to get him the ball, and Locke has the arm to just throw it near him fast, so a giant, strong man can catch the ball. So I'm not super concerned.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's not like they looked great last year as a whole, Denver. So, and Sutton looked fantastic. I mean, he looked like a number 1 wide receiver, and I mean, he didn't even have a ton of wide receiver experience in college. So, I mean, this is a guy that's still learning. And I mean, if he keeps learning, and I mean, God, now I'm going to have to go make some offers. I'm getting all fired up about Sutton. So
it's not easy.
I'm going to mute myself. I'll see you guys later.
So it'll just be me and you, Outhouse, while Bill tries to scratch his Sutton itch. But you know, we're going to get into some stuff from the timeline now. That was just an interesting one because Bill and I usually agree on a lot of things. So seeing that we were on opposite sides of that trade, I wanted to bring it to the trade master himself and see what you thought. But you know, the first one here is Rusty Cubis at Corroded When Wet. This is in response to Ryan McDowell's tweet about podcast topics they'd like addressed. And he put down how to rebuild the right way. What is your typical rebuild process? Do you blow it all up or rebuild on the fly? And, you know, matches perfectly with safe leagues and picking up orphans. So, you know, I'll throw it to you guys first because I have my own ideas about rebuilding. And actually, Bill has invited me to the Superflex Army League this year. So I have seen the team, and that is definitely a rebuild if I've ever seen one. So, you know, maybe you guys can give me some advice here.
Well, I can give you some advice. I can give you a good podcast to listen to where we've talked about this a few times already in the non-point scoring season. Last week, we had Matt Renshaw on from Dynasty Dads, and we talked about taking over an orphan which pretty much is usually a rebuild anyway.
Yep.
Which was the first joke. The first thing you have to do is assess the team you're taking over. Is it a rebuild or is it not? And then slap yourself, and just accept that it's a rebuild. Like, unless you're taking a team over that somebody had to leave for personal reasons, they're leaving this league because either A, the league sucked, in which case you should not join it, or B, their team is terrible and they're not good enough to fix it. So hit up last week, the Trade Addicts podcast. Matt is so good at taking over orphans and just destroying / rebuilding. It's a fun listen. And if you check his Twitter threads, you'll find a couple. Check his timeline. You'll see a couple of threads about his chronology. He brings you through the journey with him.
Yeah.
Don't start with me, man.
Chronicles.
I'm the guest. Don't correct me. He brings you through the journey of all of his trades, what he was thinking when he does it. It was so interesting. It was awesome read. So my process, the stupid horrible answer depends. There's never really one answer, but you could do the slow rebuild, which I love. It is not easy. It is not fun for most people, but you take your team, anybody who has any value whatsoever, you sell for picks. You let your team be terrible for 2 years usually, and then all of a sudden you make trades, you draft, and then all of a sudden you have you have a dynasty. I mean, that's in essence the point of a dynasty league, is getting these young guys and just having them forever and being awesome. One of the first orphans I took over, I did this with, and it was really because I wanted to see if I could do it. I took this team that it was a 10-team league, but it was ridiculously top heavy. The top 2 teams were good and the rest were trash. And I took over one of the trash teams already. It took 3 years. It took a lot of trading. It took drafting Saquon Barkley, but I ended up with Michael Thomas, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, Patrick Mahomes. I won 2 years in a row and then had to leave, but that's besides the point. I won the progressive pot. Why am I sticking around? I don't need those chumps anymore. So yeah, that's one way to do it. But really, chances are you're rebuilding this team, which means you don't really. Dave Gettleman should have been fired this year from the New York Giants, their GM.
Yes.
Especially when he said the phrase, I was wrong, and I now realize you cannot rebuild and win at the same time. Putting that out there. It's funny. Bill said he doesn't get to talk a lot this episode, and I'm not going to let him. You're going to build this team the way you should be building dynasty teams for the long haul. In Superflex leagues, that means quarterbacks and wide receivers. In one quarterback leagues, that means wide receivers. I don't care what your scoring is. Points per carry doesn't matter. Build through wide receivers because they're there the longest. They keep their yearly value and their statistics sort of the longest. So what you want to do is build a nice base core of your team. So when the time comes, you can just draft that Saquon Barkley, draft DeAndre Swift, trade for Derrick Henry, and get those last pieces in at the last minute to go and compete. Because wide receivers take time. Quarterbacks usually take time. Maybe recently it's been second-year breakouts, which is weird because it's supposed to be sophomore slumps. But running backs and hit right away, and tight ends, I guess, is like you can draft young tight ends and hope they turn into something in 4 years. It's easier just to trade for a guy like Delaney Walker or, I mean, all of the not anymore, but Darren Waller the year before. It's easier with tight ends to find a guy right before the season starts and trade for one as opposed to drafting a bunch of them, because that's really going to clog your roster. That's really size dependent, I guess. But that's really what I do. You find people of value and get rid of them, especially if they're running backs. If you have a running back that is scoring points, get him off your team. Someone else wants them.
Yep.
And use that to get picks. Use that to get wide receivers. If you get picks, wait to the draft. Trade those picks for players.
Bill, anything to add?
Nope.
So the interesting thing, and everything you said is right on the nose. It's what I do when I take over orphans or I'm in big time rebuilds. I find those assets that I know people are going to want, those, the big names, the guys who are scoring, and I try to trade, $1 for 4 quarters, try to get 2 guys in a pick, 3 guys in a pick, and don't get me wrong, none of those guys are going to probably be, at least initially, are not going to be as big as the name you traded. But this is also where you try to find, DJ Moore last year. You try to find maybe Cortland Sutton this year before he has the big breakout and he becomes one of those names. And you do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's, we're talking about orphans. I mean, that's pretty much what you're going to be doing because you're taking a crap team. But there's times where you can rebuild on the fly. Like if it's a team that you've built over the course of time and you don't have, you have a good distribution of aged players on your roster, there's a chance that, when a stud gets old, or a few studs get old, you might be able to rebuild on the fly. It's just a matter of building that team to, be able to weather that. And so you don't necessarily have to destroy your whole roster. And so, you might have to take a hit for 1 year and, hope that some draft picks can help you that route. But you don't have to just destroy every team when you go on a rebuild. And oftentimes that's not the best decision anyway, because I mean, if you destroy your roster, you've just signed up for a 3-year rebuild typically. And I mean, you can do it in a year or 2 years if you get lucky, but odds are, you'd have to hit on most of your picks for that to happen.
Yeah. And here's something else, know your league. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes someone on Twitter reaches out to us and says, hey, we have an orphan, you want to grab it? And you say, yeah, sure. You don't know a lot of the people in that league. But if you do, I mean, like I said, Bill is letting me take over a team in the Superflex Army league. I have Juju Smith-Schuster on that team. Well, when Bill also informed me that Outhouse, your partner in crime, Mr. Hart Hands himself, is in it, I said, first thing I'm going to do when I take over this team is see what he'll give me for Juju Smith-Schuster. I know he's a big-time Steelers fan. I know he still has a lot of love for Juju. And I'm not saying he will be the person I trade him to, but he's going to be my first stop along the way because he probably will give me the best deal for Juju. Obviously, if I don't get something I like, I'll shop him around to everyone else. But, those are things if you have the opportunity, who are the guys in your league, who are their favorite team? Who are their favorite players? If you have someone who's a big Tyler Lockett fan, you have him on your team. Okay. Maybe Tyler Lockett for Curtis Samuels and Austin Hooper. That could be a trade that could be made.
You mean Austin Hooper, who scored more points than Tyler Lockett did while missing a few games? Yeah, no, that's a great.
Oh,
that's
the
idea,
trades for a couple of the members.
I feel like
we're going to get back to that, but I actually have something to add to this conversation before we get back to Sneaky Josh right now, who is just throwing buckets of shade at me for a really terrible trade offer I sent him earlier today. Before you get. Am I frozen? Are you guys frozen? I'm just going to keep talking. Cool. Before you take over an orphan, if someone says hey, I got an orphan in this league, usually they'll give you a link. I play all of my Dynasty leagues on myfantasyleague.com. So that's all I can really speak to. If you don't, you should. I've been saying A a lot this sentence. But B, in the leagues, there is a transactions button where you can look for past trades over the past certain amount of days, see how active the league is. We had a question on our last show with these guys, actually. this week for the Trade Addicts Pod, where it says, how do you rebuild a team with a league that's not very active? And the horrible answer is you kind of don't. You need an active league to really rebuild the team. Yep. Because without trading, you're literally only building through the draft. And man, just go do some research and see how hard it is to hit on draft picks, especially when you can't trade for multiple firsts.
Right.
Also, you can search for trade offers. So what you do is search for trade offers that happened to the team before you took it over. See who was asking for players on your team. See if you would do some of the trades this other person said no to, or see if you can work something else out to give, if you saw that Brian was coming after, hit my computer. Brian was coming after Juju before you took it over. You'd be like, all right, no, okay, I kind of like what he's doing over here. Let me just throw this instead.
Yep.
Like that's smart moves before you actually join the league and smart moves once you get in, because the awesome thing is when a new person comes in, it can spark activity in a league that it hasn't seen since its beginning.
Right.
Josh and I are in the Dynasty Trades HQ1 listener league. There was an orphan. It got took over. This dude did like 10 trades in 2 days.
Yep.
And it got other people trading. It's addictive, huh? Nice. Work that in. But, it's contagious. That's really the word I was going with in the first place, but thought I'd tie that in. People see trades and they want to do it. So be smart. Look before you leap, because again, unless you're getting a year for free, which if your team is super bad, don't be ashamed to ask.
Yep.
Just be like, look, man, I'll take this over, but there's got to be some sort of discount, because with no players and no picks, what is anybody supposed to do with this for at least a year or two?
Right.
Then it's not super worth it to jump in on something that you don't see a bright light at the end of a hopefully not too long tunnel.
And another thing you need to look at before you accept a team is look at the teams that were in the playoffs and see if there's any super loaded teams, because there's just leagues where a team just runs lucky with their picks, plus they have studs, and all of a sudden they have this stupid ultra all-star team, and you're going to be 2-3 years away from even having a chance to compete, unless you get super lucky. So that's something to at least pay attention to kind of, so you can figure out what your expectations are for the team, in the timeline that you have for it.
All right, man, you have a super long show sheet, and we've been talking about this for a half hour.
Yeah, it's all right. We do what we do.
Let's talk about what Corey popped up.
Hold on. Randall Kennedy at FF_Terminator. Who do you prefer, Deebo Samuel or DK Metcalf? And the thing here, he put Deebo over greater than sign Metcalf, and I super disagree with that. Ooh. DK Metcalf over Deebo Samuel.
We gonna fight, because I 100% agree with the Terminator. It's Deebo, and I think I have a unhealthy attachment to Deebo, because before this season started, I was the lone voice on the mountain screaming that Deebo was better than Dante Pettis, and I was shouted down by some of the greats that Dante Pettis was so good. And, my explanation was, well, if he is that good, why did the San Francisco 49ers feel that they had to spend a very high second-round pick to add to not only Dante Pettis, but Kittle, which, by the way, I love Kittle. Kittle is the man. But they tried to trade for Odell. They tried to trade for other receivers and couldn't get it done. They got Deebo, and that's because they had some concerns with Dante Pettis. So I think we just saw the tip of the iceberg from Deebo. I think we may have seen the peak or almost the peak of DK Metcalf. So
let me tell you where you're wrong.
Okay.
I don't really have anything to say. I was hoping something would come to me when I said that. Yeah, I have no idea what the hell that says.
Me neither.
DK Metcalf has turned into Russell Wilson's safety blanket, and that is a huge, huge fantasy asset. Doug Baldwin I love Doug Baldwin. I'm a Seahawks fan. He took me to my first dynasty championship. So I still have him on one team just in case he comes back. I love Doug Baldwin. He was not that great. Let's be honest. DK Metcalf is. He is gigantic. He is fast. He is disgusting at contested catches. And that is what you need when Russell Wilson starts scrambling. And that's why Doug Baldwin did so well. He knew exactly what to do when Wilson started scrambling, and he was scrappy as hell and had great hands. So when that ball was coming between him and a defender, he can rip it out of the defender's hands if he had to. That's everything, but DK Metcalf is better. He's a better actual receiver, and he's also a deep threat, which Baldwin never was.
Correct.
Now, don't get me wrong, Lockett being there takes away a little bit of DK's ceiling, I guess. But, I mean, it's not like we can say that doesn't happen with Kittle and, I almost said Pettis, my apologies, Debo. Between Kittle and Debo, I think I completely disagree with you saying that we saw the peak of DK. I think we saw what he could be, not even to begin to bring in what his potential could be.
I'm laughing because you're like, here, let's just do this one real fast. And then immediately you guys, are completely...
Well, I was hoping you would just listen to me and move on. I didn't think you'd actually have an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think DK could end up being almost like a mini Dez over the course of his career. So when I say mini, I just mean maybe not quite as productive, but in that range.
As many touchdowns, that's for sure.
Right. So
Seahawks,
but just the way he plays and like his physicality and that sort of thing. And I think I think I'd take DK over Debo, but it's not like crazy between the two of them. Crazy difference, I guess is my point. It's all preference and the type of player you like.
Okay, no more talking. Next question. Victor Coda at Victor Coda 34, 12-team PPR Superflex tight end premium. The 101, which is going to be Joe Burrow, and the 212 for Mixon on Twitter was 54-46 in favor of the 101. That's wrong. Just putting it out there. Joe Mixon is absolutely worth more than the 101. I get that quarterbacks are the cheapest they can be during the draft. I get that Joe Burrow is awesome and he's walking into an awesome situation. Yes, I am hosting. This is my show now. It's their fault. They invited me on. I take over shows.
All good.
Joe Mixon has been great on a bad team. And that bad team, besides getting 3 healthy offensive linemen back, all of their draft picks are getting that 101 awesome quarterback Joe Burrow, assuming they don't do something really stupid. Mixon is only going to get better. Man, I wish I was eating pot pie. That's from the chat. That's not out of nowhere. So yeah, I am very rookie fever, writing this off to rookie fever because that is wrong. It is absolutely Joe Mixon.
I had actually pot pie for dinner today, so funny Corey brought that up. But
I had a hamburger without a bun. How fucking boring is that? Yeah,
that's pretty boring. We're going to be back to agreeing again.
Yay!
I think people, it's weird because there's recency bias, and then there's, I don't even know what the opposite is. I think a lot of people are looking at what Mixon did the first 6-8 weeks of the season, and it wasn't good. And we've just said Joe Mixon wasn't good this year. And we totally disregard what he did the last 8 weeks of the season. And it's actually the opposite of Cooper Kupp, because we still say Cooper Kupp had a good season, even though his first 8 weeks were good and his second were bad. But that's besides the point. It's all to fit whatever our narrative is. And people are saying, well, Joe Mixon didn't have a look at the last 8 weeks of the season, people.
Running back 2, I think I heard recently.
What's that?
I think he was like the running back 2,
Yeah.
or 2 or 3 the last like 6-8 weeks. I heard that somewhere.
If I hear another person on Twitter say, "Well, Joe Mixon didn't have a good season," I'm going to lose my mind. If I can get Joe Mixon for the 101, I don't have it anywhere. I'm doing it because it should be the 101 plus. And don't ask me what the plus is. I'd have to see a team, but it's definitely 101 plus to get Joe Mixon, in my opinion.
All right. Okay. Hey, thanks to everybody that's been in the chat. Let's address a few things that people have posted. We've kind of ignored some of the actual questions. Corey Ashburn, if y'all get a chance tonight, I've been seeing some crazy talks on Twitter about A.J. Brown. I saw that some people are valuing him more than Lamar in a super flex, and other group of people who value him as a top 3 wide receiver overall. Wow.
Wrong.
Yeah, agreed. Like anything like that's nuts. I mean, I don't know. We had a talk on Trade Addicts on where we value A.J. Brown, and I think I was the highest at wide receiver 14.
14, right behind Cortland Sutton, who was at 13.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of where we're all at, and being valued more than Lamar is just, I mean,
insane. Lamar at this point is like at least top 5 in a super flex league pick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. If you're in a league with a guy who thinks A.J. Brown is worth more than Lamar, please take advantage of that guy. He deserves it. You shouldn't feel bad about it. Sorry if that guy's listening.
And by the way, I don't have any shares of A.J. Brown. If you do, your first order of business should be shopping him around. See what you can get. Go to the guy who has the 101 in your league and go, "You want A.J. Brown?" See what that guy's willing to offer and just work your way down the list, because I personally don't think his value is going to be any higher than it is right now. I think he's super talented, but they're on a team that wants to run it 30 times a game. He's going to have games. Don't get me wrong, guys. He's not going to, be 2 for 35 and you're hoping for a touchdown every week. He's going to have some big blow up games, but we are at a point where we're seeing stuff like, hey, what about Lamar Jackson is better than A.J. Brown? Okay, find that guy and say, hey, I have A.J. Brown. Jaden over here, he did a 50-50 poll regarding Harry versus Geis. If you guys end up at room for an extra topic, we do. So, Harry or Geis? Go.
Real quick, before, in one of the Trade Addicts leagues, A.J. Brown went for Galladay and the 205. So if you have A.J. Brown, do that. Find guys, 2-3 people, wide receivers ahead of him in ADP, and start asking for that guy plus a second, and then start working your way down.
Yep.
Okay. But I still, I can't give up on Geis. I can't do it. I think I'd take Geis over Harry. Harry was my 101 last year. Geis was my 102, not super flex the year he came out. But yeah, Geis is just so good. And Harry's good. Harry's very, very good. We don't know what that offense is going to look like this year.
Yeah. This is hard for me because I was in that boat with you, Outhouse, until another injury happened, and now I don't listen. I don't know if it's Washington's medical staff. I don't know.
They all need to be fired and like blackballed, and
1,000%. And I know you listen to the pod. If you listen to the pod, you know my stance on the Washington franchise overall. But I'm just scared of taking Geis on for, I don't know if it is Washington's medical staff or he just has bad knees and this will be a every other year or yearly thing. Now I don't think the upside is high for Harry, but I'm pretty sure the guy will be on the field, and that's kind of what you want in fantasy, guys that get on the field, kind of. So, Bill, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, that's tough because I love Geis, and I was so high on him entering. It's hard to say because I really believe in Geis's talent, but you just don't know behind the scenes how does Washington feel about him now? Are they going to draft another running back just in case because he's shown 2 years in a row, that he's getting injured, and so there's a little bit of doubt there, and Harry is valued less than what he was, and it really under no fault of his own, just because he didn't play the first half of the season. So I think I go Harry. But yeah, it's a tough one because I really like Geis, and I have Geis everywhere, so I might actually try to make a couple moves just so I can kind of balance it out a little bit.
Make them moves. Jaden with another one. Pained me to trade DK in a league recently, Superflex tight end premium. Sent DK, Melgo, and Mitchell Trubisky, and he received the 103, Mike Williams, and Hunter Henry. Trademaster Outhouse, we're going to let you go first on this one. Which side do you like in a Superflex tight end premium?
Sorry, bro. I like the side you gave away.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's actually... Yeah, I think you need a little bit more in that trade.
The problem with the 103, if something silly happens and someone takes Swift or Taylor and you get Tua, it'll make you feel a little better. But I mean, I'm not a Mike Williams guy. I loved him coming out of college. I hated that he went to the Chargers. I hate the amount of injuries he's been dealing with. Hopefully they get, if Tyrod steps in, I love Mike Williams so much more. Hunter Henry, just let that man go to the Patriots or something. Just let him go somewhere. I love the idea of the stuff you got, but man, DK, we talked about it on the Trade Addicts pod. I think Melvin Gordon at this point is a buy for me. With where he could go, with all the teams that have cap space have need for running back and are good situations for running backs. So there's a chance they need to spend money and just take Melvin Gordon. I'm not upset with your side, but I still think the trade is kind of heavily in the side you gave away.
What would you need on top of it to make it even?
Tyler Lockett.
Honestly, yeah, something dependable. Like nothing in what you got is secure. The 103 could be something great. Mike Williams can be something great. Hunter Henry has the ability to be something great. You gave away DK, who we have seen score points. Trubisky, which there's ups and downs, but he still has the ability to put up 30, 40-point games, even though it might be followed by a 3-4-point game. And it went away, so I forgot the other piece you gave away. But it's...
Melvin Gordon.
Melvin Gordon, yeah. Half a season, he put up points that a lot of RB2s put up. Man, you know what? Give me the 103, combine Mike Williams and Hunter Henry into a quarterback. You make that Dak Prescott in the 103, and I'll be happy. Or even if you take that value and put it into a just really good wide receiver, I'd be happy with it. If that was... Keenan Allen's not that great. If that was not AJ Brown, that's not good enough either. Tyreek Hill's too much. I'm blanking, so I can't really think of anyone like
that's all right.
Into the second, mid-third startup value wise, which I don't know if that definitely doesn't equal Mike Williams and Hunter Henry, but that's I think the level I need for the 103 to cover the rest.
Yeah, and this kind of reminds me of the old clip from Family Guy, where they say you can have the boat or what's in the box? And Peter goes, there could be anything in the box. It could even be a boat. And Lois just looks at him like, so why aren't we just taking the boat? And I feel, at least if you look at DK versus 103, I think you're giving away the boat for a box that might have a boat in it. 103 might turn into something that is DK. And if, we just had the Debo DK argument, but if you feel like Russ does about DK, that the best is yet to come, you're giving that up for, what? Something that you hope can turn into what DK has already proven he can give you. And that's kind of a tough draw. And, hey, look.
Real quick, though, I'm going to interrupt you because I know it's getting kind of late. Matt Renshaw is actually in the chat, so I hope you're here when we were talking nice things about you. He says, come on, Russ, trade addict that you are. You can't flip the 103 for more. That's also a very important point. This isn't the last trade you're ever going to do, man. You're going to take those. You're going to keep moving. The problem is, during the non-point scoring season, what you're trying to do is gain value. I don't think you necessarily did in that trade. That 103 is going to gain value. Yeah. So, I mean, at that draft, if Tua does go 102, flip the hell out of that, and you will get a solid player because there is someone drooling over DeAndre Swift. And if your team isn't ready to take on a running back like that, get the hell rid of him. Trade back 4 spots and grab Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb, whoever's still around. The only way to fix a trade that didn't work out well is with another trade. Yep. So you could just keep moving it. And yes, nothing is ever final. So,
and I'll sprinkle a little bit, more value, good news on there. Hunter Henry's a free agent. If he ends up on one of these, we say, hey, what if he goes to the Patriots? We talked about it on Monday. What if he ends up on the Bengals with Joe Burrow and all of those weapons? Now, all of a sudden, that value has gone up. His value has gone up even more because we're going from a unsure QB situation. Maybe it's Tyrod. Maybe it's Justin Herbert. Maybe it's a free agent to you have Joe Burrow throwing the ball to Hunter Henry, flanked by possibly AJ Green if he gets franchised, Auden Tate, Tyler Boyd, John Ross. You have Joe Mixon there. All of a sudden, Hunter Henry looks a little bit better. So, like you said, Outhouse, it's not, it's not this is the last trade you're ever going to do. Matt Renshaw said, come on, you're flipping that 103, right? Of course you are. Maybe it's during the rookie draft when that value's at an all-time high. But as it stands on its face right now, yeah, we think the value's on the other side. But Jaden, I'm sure if you're listening to the Addicts and you are, a viewer and a listener of ours, it's always about, all right, this trade was good. We're moving on to the next trade now. And we're just trying to, in the non-point scoring season, gain the value. So last but not least, there are these guys, they're not really well known. They have a little pod called the Dynasty Trades HQ pod. Not really sure if anyone's ever heard of them. I'm just kidding. They're great guys and everybody knows who they are. This is a start 1 QB, Juju and the 304, or the 104, Bob Woods and John Ross. Bill, who would you take in this one?
I read that 3 times as Bob Ross. But
this was Shane. Shane is the only person I know that calls him Bob Woods for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. What do you, Russ? You got any ideas?
Yeah, I'm with the majority here. I think the 104 Robert Woods, because I can't say that other one, and John Ross. I love Juju, I really do, but you got to see what's going to happen to that offense. Is Roethlisberger going to bother coming back? The dude looks like an offensive lineman right now. Like, is he going to get back in shape and be able to throw in time? If not, are they going to be able to get another quarterback after losing their first round pick? Minka was completely worth it. Don't get me wrong, but it kind of put them in a bit of a rough spot. I think they had too much faith in Mason Rudolph, but it's tough. Like, there's been trades of Juju going for the 103. It was in a Superflex league, but still, like, that's not that far off. Robert Woods has like 2 straight 250-point seasons. John Ross was staying healthy for a while and is going to get a real quarterback to throw him the ball in a system coming off of, the one that Robert Woods plays in right now. I think there's too much on the other side where maybe if I'm rebuilding, though I wouldn't have wanted to get rid of the 104. Like, if I could somehow throw something else besides the 104 and get Juju back with Robert Woods and John Ross, I'd be all for that. But this is a weird combination of things. Like this might be a Brian Hart trade. Like, he wanted Juju on his team, he made it happen. I get that. The value to me is on Juju. I can say that like completely. I agree with that, but I still think I want the other side.
Yeah, and I almost, when I first saw this, split it into 2 trades. In my own head, 104 and Woods for Juju. Would I do that? Absolutely. 304 for John Ross. Would I do that? Absolutely. And I've heard a lot of different pods talk about it. This might be the time to buy your Bengals, and probably one of the cheapest guys to get on that offense is going to be John Ross. So if you can throw a third at somebody, hell, try to start with a 4th just to see if someone says, I've had this dude for 2 years. Guy doesn't stay healthy. Yeah, he's electric. But, I mean, he's a poor man's Will Fuller. He can stretch the field. He can get down, but he can't stay healthy. Except Will Fuller gets a bunch of buzz because he's been, I guess, in and out of lineups longer. But, when I break it down into kind of 2 separate trades to kind of weed out some of the confusion, I say yes to both, and it's that 104 Woods and Ross side. And, we brought this trade up because, we're super excited, Bill and I. We're getting the Dynasty Trades HQ fellas here next week.
2 weeks.
Or 2 weeks, sorry, in 2 weeks. So I actually saw this trade and I was like, wow, this is a pretty cool trade because there's a lot of stuff. Like Outhouse said, this is probably a Shane trade because he just throws a bunch of stuff at the wall and sees what it'll take to get someone that he wants. So yeah, but we want to throw this on there because we have these guys in 2 weeks and they're pretty awesome.
Yeah, my boy Jerry O'Shea from Killarney in Ireland says Juju sucks for him.
Boy.
I kind of, as a fan, like Juju's the one guy that I don't have a problem kind of overpaying or paying a little more than market. So I think I'm leaning to the Juju side, but yeah, I think value, or at least production, overall production that you're going to get out of the assets is absolutely the 104 side. So that being said, I think we're at the end of the show.
We did it, fellas. Again, Outhouse, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for just diving into the madness with us. We talked about the value of AJ Brown, Debo versus DK Metcalf, and just so much other stuff. Outhouse and I got to fight, which we don't usually do, so I liked it. We usually agree on a lot of stuff, so it was good to be on opposite sides. But appreciate it. If there's any parting words that you would like to say on the way out.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of you guys. I've known and liked you both before you started the show. You told me about this show. I said it was an awesome idea. Dibs on first guest. So I'm glad you actually held that. And yeah, like I yelled at you guys on my show saying I was in the chats for at least for the first half hour of every show when you were on Mondays, because I was, you know, sneaking down into the basement getting ready to record mine, and I would just listen to yours. So I've listened to every single one of your shows. Big fan. Awesome to be on. It's, you know, you guys are awesome to talk to. You know that. You don't need to hear me say that. But to be somewhat self-serving, Trade Addicts podcast, me and my homeboy Heart Hands at Brian Har FF. There you go. That sticker, ffpodshirts.storenvy.com. Trade Addicts Pod, Superflex Super Show, Dynasty Diagnostic, Dynasty Game Night, Top Shelf DFF. Swag from all of those things. 10% goes to Fantasy Cares of each purchase. So, you know, get something for yourself, give something to the kids, have a little, you know, fun buying stuff. That's not the right word, but I kind of trailed off at the end and didn't know what else to say. But yeah, I am at Dynasty Outhouse on Twitter. Follow me because my ego just always needs a boost. And love you guys. Thank you for having me on.
Also, if you guys aren't doing it, I don't know why. You know, subscribe to the Trade Addicts podcast. If you thought he was good on here, he's great every week with Brian Har, so Brian Hartley, Mr. Heart Hands himself. The guy has more AKAs than I know what to do with. But they're great, man. They're both super smart. They're both super entertaining. You won't regret it if you're not already doing it. These guys also have a Patreon. If you want a little bit extra of these guys, do that. It's more than worth it. You won't be disappointed. You know, do it. Just do it. You know, we're gonna wrap this thing up. You know, everybody that was in the stream today. Outhouse brought the fan base. Jaden, Jerry, over in Ireland. What are you doing up so late / early?
Don't judge the man.
Hey, listen, I'm glad he did. He's just a better man than me. I get tired easily. You know, Jaden, Jerry, Nathaniel, Corey, you know, you guys came, you guys brought the heat. We loved it. You know, remember, you know, if you like seeing our mugs, you know, remember subscribe and click that bell so you know when we go live on YouTube. You know, if you want to listen to the podcast, we're everywhere. If you're listening to us, you know, tell your friends. Let them know that we're out there. We're doing it. We're just grabbing Twitter and we're running with it.
Yes, sir. So yeah, thank you so much to everybody in chat. We so much appreciate it. Spread the word if you would. You know, Outhouse, thank you so much. We ready to call it a night?
I think we're ready to call it a night. Outhouse, thank you.
We were calling this halftime. What are you guys talking about?
Hey, I'm down. I mean,
we're going for another hour and 15 minutes once we get off of here. But you know, again, thank you, Outhouse. Appreciate it. Have a good night. We are out of here.
Late.
Bye.